There's a country that is becoming the new United States, the destination for people fleeing countries like Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. Many people in the United States may hear a phrase like they're coming to the United States, but the issue with immigration isn't coming to, it's really fleeing from. And the United States isn't the only country that is burdened with immigration. This is the South American country of Chile, one of the best countries to live on the planet. It's safe, it's beautiful, and it's also becoming the new United States. This country offers the facility of the same Spanish language. It has a very strong economy, high incomes. There's a need for workers in this country. Many people that are leaving troubled Latin American countries right now are not simply considering only the United States, but Chile has become an attractive option for people who are fleeing countries that are going through difficult times. However, the capacity of this country to sustain so many immigrants isn't possible, and a country that once welcomed immigrants is now finding that it's at capacity, with the outskirts of cities becoming nothing more than shanty towns. At over 9,000 feet, the places on the northern part of the country where illegal crossings are happening are one of the most hostile places on earth. Overnight, people freeze to death, and in the daytime, the desert heat. Over 1,000 people a day cross illegally into the country of Chile through its northern border with Bolivia and Peru through some of the harshest and most difficult terrains on earth. High elevations, which many people are not used to, cold weather overnight, and the heat of the desert day make this one of the most unbearable landscapes on earth, leading to the demise of many people who don't even make it to their destination. The highway off-ramps have become shanty towns. It seems like a few years ago these were nothing more than highway off-ramps, but today they're entire shanty towns where people from many other countries are making temporary dwellings as they arrive to Chile for the first time. In the country of Chile, you're not able to work unless you're a citizen. In this country, foreigners cannot take the jobs of citizens, so the locals can relax knowing that their jobs are not at stake. Anybody entering this country will have to go work at people's residences, doing personal jobs for people, not actually at a fixed job position. This country was among the safest places to live in the world, with sprawling suburbs, mansions with pools, an absolute desirable place to live. However, this nation has had one of the largest increases in violence of any country in the world. The reason? The influx of people from troubled nations. The government here has allowed people to make shanty towns, and in just a few years, places have transformed and clandestine shanty towns have popped up underneath highway overpasses and in off-ramps, which has led to protests, which led to the citizens burning down some of these shanty towns. After the burning of shanty towns and immigrant housing, many people in the country were outraged. The reality is that they're going to have to live in their beautiful gated communities with pools and large lavish farms within a mile or two from rundown inner city areas that have become wide open shanty towns. The notion of becoming like the United States, a place of hate for immigrants, doesn't really sit well with many of the people in Chile who understand that immigration is a problem, but that they don't want to become a hateful country. Many Haitians, for example, have been already establishing communities in Chile, and this is a far but very good destination for Haitians looking for a better quality of life. Unfortunately, homelessness has become rampant in Chile, and just like the United States, many times the citizens are finding themselves living way worse off than the new established migrants. But the situation of migrants has aggravated the situation of poverty, homelessness, and addiction. And now Chile has become very similar to the United States, where many times the migrants are living better than the citizens. Homelessness has now become more of an issue in Chile than it is in the United States. Chile, once a beautiful country, has become plagued with rampant homelessness, just like the United States. Somewhere there's a line between living in an improvised shantytown and being homeless. While both of these conditions are deplorable, there is a definition between a shantytown in a homeless camp. And in the case of Chile, they've seen the increase of both. But one does have to denote the difference between being homeless and living in a shanty town. And in the case of Chile, homelessness itself, people with literally nowhere to go, has become a real life thing that people have to see on a day-to-day basis, like if they were in the United States. Human trafficking and drug trafficking always go hand in hand with illegal immigration, and many times these criminal networks attach themselves to the flow of migrants to bring their products, human trafficking, and illegal substances to the doorsteps of wealthy nations like the United States, Canada, Chile, and Argentina. And unfortunately for the country of Chile, much more increase in crime, prevalence of addiction, and other things that come along with illegal immigration, as the pipeline that brings the people has also started to bring illicit and harmful substances right to their doorsteps. The violence and insecurity that was common in much of Latin America has now infiltrated its way into a country that was relatively peaceful, safe, and quiet. The United States isn't the only place that is prosperous and has to take on the burden of other states that are failed. The beautiful country of Chile, just as beautiful and as wealthy as the United States per capita in many cases, is dealing with the same problem, that their beautiful paradise, a land of bountiful opportunity, is an attractive option for people that are fleeing nations, people who don't have a choice but to leave their countries behind. Many times when people immigrate to another country, it isn't so much out of necessity, but they believe the stories of prosperities in other lands, not knowing that being illegal in somebody else's country is a very difficult prospect. They think about the houses, the cars, the businesses, and all the great things that these other countries have to offer, not realizing that being undocumented on somebody else's land brings nothing but hardship. There's a YouTube channel called Luis Peralta TV out of the Dominican Republic, and he shares stories of people who do the same exact thing, immigrate to another country, eventually get deported, only to find out that the dream they were sold was unrealistic.
Donde usted está bien es en su país. Donde usted vive bien es en su país porque en su país.
Channels like Luis Peralta TV give us realistic stories of people who cross borders illegally and the hardships that they face. In the case of this particular clip, the man was saying the best place you're going to live is in your own country because living illegally on somebody else's land is never comfortable. However, messages like this are rare among YouTube. When people come to the United States, immigrating here legally or illegally, many times everything they do is show off a lavish lifestyle that is unrealistic, unobtainable, or an outright exaggeration that prompts other people to immigrate to other countries, thinking that they're going to encounter wealth, not knowing the reality of living illegally on somebody else's land. Countries like the United States, Chile, offer people escaping countries that are in absolutely unlivable conditions the opportunities to immigrate to another country, and many times even have legal avenues to stay within that country or become citizens. In the case of the United States, for example, many people have came to the United States claiming that if they stayed in their home countries of Haiti, Cuba, Venezuela, that they would encounter hardships, persecutions, and that they had to leave those countries for their safety. However, as soon as they obtain legal residency in the United States, only a few years after having to quote-unquote flee their country, the first thing they do when they get their residency is go back and visit the country that they somehow had to flee for their lives from, showing that in reality they exaggerated their case when they supported a story to U.S. Border and Custom Patrol, telling them that they had to flee their country, that there was an imminent threat to their safety. Many Cubans, Guatemalans, Dominicans, Haitians, and other nationalities tell these stories to U.S. Border Patrol about how they had to flee their country because an imminent threat to their life existed. Under this pretext, they are allowed a temporary status, and many even become U.S. citizens, with the notion that the United States or another country is sheltering them from an imminent threat in their home country. But the moment they obtain a legal status, the first thing they do is go back and visit the country that they somehow had to flee from. Countries like the United States do have avenues to help people who are legitimately fleeing a real situation. Unfortunately, we can quickly see by their actions, like the moment they obtain their U.S. residency, that the first thing they feel inclined to do is go back to that dangerous country that they somehow had to flee when they applied for their U.S. citizenship statuses, showing that in reality, they were not really fleeing anything in their home country, but they lied to the United States and told them that they were coming here to flee an international crisis, when in reality, they were coming here because they wanted to. And the moment that they got into the United States, got their foot through the door, they go back to that country that was supposedly a threat to them, showing to us that really they were abusing the system. And countries like the United States have provided many programs like the Cuban Adjustment Act and many others that were meant to help people flee situations in places that were dangerous to them. Unfortunately, there are more people abusing the system than there are people taking advantage of a provision, a privilege, to find refuge in another country, a prosperous one at that, to escape a situation in their home country that wasn't even the country's fault. Many people forget to note that the United States has provided and continues to provide exile and refugee status to many people throughout many conflicts that arise throughout the world. But unfortunately, many people take advantage of these provisions to come to the United States not seeking freedom, not seeking safety, but seeking material possessions that they very well could have acquired in their own home countries. Yet many people in the United States feel that the reason everybody wants to come here is because America is the greatest country in the world. A completely retarded notion. People are fleeing countries because their countries are upside down. The United States is not the only option that people consider. Canada, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, even Mexico are now becoming places where people are going to. Especially now that the United States is seeming to close its doors to immigrants, there are still many other countries that are welcoming immigrants. Unfortunately, a few countries are going to have to swallow up the masses of immigrants that the United States is rejecting. For countries like Mexico, they've taken advantage of the Haitians, Dominicans, and other hardworking people. When they came in small numbers, the immigration was actually beneficial for both ends. Chile and Mexico are both examples of countries that have benefited greatly initially from the influx of immigrants. But it gets to the point where the number is too large and these home countries can no longer support just large numbers of immigrants. In the case of the United States, a country with over 300 million people in 50 states. Some states where less than 2% of the population or 3% of the population is foreign born, like West Virginia and Alabama. There are plenty of places to put people in places that would otherwise even die without somebody coming in, bringing in new blood and new life to those places. In the case of the United States, for the most part, immigration isn't about there are too many. It's about a sentiment for hate. But there are other countries like Chile, for example, that are definitely being stretched far too much by immigration. These countries don't have the same funds, land space, or population that the United States has to absorb these immigrants. Other countries, the problem isn't people moving to their country, like Panama and Costa Rica. It's a number of people that pass through their country on the destination to somewhere else that overburdens the system. Nobody ever talks about these problems. When it comes to immigration, Americans seem to think that they're the only country in the world that people go to looking for new horizons. But the reality is that many people leave to many different lands looking for better outcomes. And immigration is a problem affecting many countries, not just the United States. In countries like Chile, the influx of immigrants is at the disposal and the benefit of the citizens of the country to be used to help them in their homes and small businesses. However, in the United States, the complete opposite is different. Laws in the United States seem to prevent people like me and you from being able to exploit immigrants or even use them, while large corporations always have exemptions for how they can use them. Take the state of Florida, where immigrants, people from other countries, are able to go by the thousands to work in fields picking strawberries and oranges and many other large industries. Even the state of Florida and their construction projects, nothing but migrant workers. These laws in the United States ensure that only large corporations are able to exploit immigrants, while people like me and you are not able to. It seems like the United States has really become a place that is becoming less and less attractive to immigrants. And today, with the new laws in the United States, many of these immigrants are seeking other lands, like the country of Chile, which offers at least a more dignified approach to immigration. In the United States, the sentiment of hate towards immigrants matters even more than the economical prospects, and many states like Florida have been stabbing themselves in the foot time and time again, making laws and regulations and more difficult for people that are benefiting the state simply to please the sentiment of a few people who wouldn't want to see these people here. Well, that isn't the approach of immigration that every other country has. It certainly is the approach that many places in the United States are taking, and it's like stabbing yourself in the foot time and time again. The United States used to be the land that people would go to looking for freedom, but today there's a lot of other countries that are finding immigrants showing up at their doorsteps, many times to a benefit, but it gets to the point where it certainly becomes too much. In the case of the country of Chile, they definitely have a worse homeless and, of course, immigration problem in the United States now, as they cannot control other countries. They may have created a prosperous place for themselves, but the conflicts in other places seem to end up at their doorsteps. And this is really the reality of immigration. It isn't that there's something wrong in the United States or in Chile, it's that there's something wrong somewhere else that brings people to flee from other places. And unfortunately, many times parasites attach themselves to these people, making the situation even harder for those having to flee.